We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Nick Barris along with attorney Clint Kelly. Good to have him on with us, a malpractice attorney, pretty much an expert on hospital policy and standard of care. We're talking about the RaDonda Vought case. We're streaming live on Facebook. We're also here on the Plus. We're going to take some phone calls. I want to remind folks we had the district attorney who prosecuted on yesterday. We've reached out and we were not able to get the Tennessee Nurses Association or American Nurses Association to send someone to join us on the program. They did send a statement which we read earlier, which, as you might imagine, they're deeply distressed by this verdict, believe it has harmful ramifications, but just want to let you know we've reached out. We also reached out to RaDonda Vought and her attorney, have not heard back, but they're welcome to join us. And Clint also, I am in the process of trying to track down some of these jurors, because I think it might be interesting to hear from them about what they thought about this case moving forward. But again, as we talked about, and a lot of people on Facebook pointing out, is Vanderbilt somehow getting a pass here? I just want to go back to this. It seems like it all came down on RaDonda Vought, who conceded and was always up front, and her lawyer pointed this out about the role she played, but that it wasn't criminal.
Yeah, Nick, I tell you what went through my mind as I was hearing what Nurse Vaught was putting forth in her defense. Did Vanderbilt set her up to fail? And you see that sometimes when there are hospital system failures where the healthcare providers are doing the best they can under the circumstances. They're only as good as they are trained to do and as many resources as they have. And in certain situations, hospitals can set their staff up to fail by having poor policies or poor enforcement or confusing operatives, confusing standing orders. And in this particular case, what you hope for is you hope Vanderbilt will change its policies based on what has happened in this case. You got to believe that they would. That's what we try to do in the civil justice system. In malpractice cases, part of what we try to do is change behavior, particularly of hospitals, so that their staff can succeed and not have serious mistakes like this that can kill a person. Yeah,
and there's some people on Facebook also commenting that they concede that RaDonda Vought made mistakes here, but that it's not homicide, but because she didn't intend to do it. Keep in mind, if she'd intended to do it, she would have been charged with first or second degree murder. She was charged with reckless homicide. The jury said, no, we don't think it's reckless homicide. Came back with criminally negligent homicide. Again, no one is saying
it was
that
a compromised verdict. Let's keep that in mind.
Compromised verdict, and no one is saying that she did this intentionally.
Correct.
Whatsoever. So we want to be very clear about that. And I wonder, too, if you think, and we've talked about this, and I'm not specifically about Vanderbilt, but the medical profession in general, do we think what happened here perhaps is a symptom of, as you've told me before, nurses being asked to do more and more faster? Speed translates into profitability, okay? More money's made when you can do things fast and get them going. And you've said before, you think that compromises safety.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been saying that here for months, actually years, Nick.
Yeah.
I've called it assembly line medicine. There is a pace at which the staff have to follow to meet the needs of the company or the hospital to make money. And the margin of safety begins to shrink over time. And I'm afraid that that is one thing that contributed to this situation, because just from what I've read, I don't know that Nurse Vaught had the time and the ability to really soak in what she was doing. And again, that's where the system comes into place. If you have a system that can help the staff, it can catch errors. But if you don't have a system in place that's healthy, nurses learn to override procedures because the hospital lets other nurses do it. And so they think, well, monkey see, monkey do. And when you see patients and have situations occur every day over and over and over again, we call it human factors. Those things become rote. They become secondhand. We don't even think about them anymore. And you may get away with it 9 times out of 10, but it's that 10th time that can bite you.
Right.
And at least that's the way I'm understanding how Nurse Vaught has presented this, from the standpoint that Vanderbilt, I mean, these are not her words, but the way I'm interpreting it is Vanderbilt set up Nurse Vaught to fail. That's the way I'm understanding her defense.
That's what her attorney, I think Peter Stryance, would echo as well. He brought that up. Let's take a call or two. We've got some lines open, 737-7587. Also monitoring the comments on Facebook. And we'll go first to Angela. Good morning, Angela.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, what's on your mind?
I have a statement and then a question.
Okay.
So the statement is, the landmark to Err is Human report brought about major changes in healthcare to reduce medical error deaths And it states one of the biggest obstacles is many providers perceive the medical liability system as a serious impediment to systemic efforts to uncover and learn from errors. Yesterday, prosecutor Chad Jackson said that this case was not about upholding just culture. Despite the rhetoric, this case is an outlier. This study and current studies disagree, showing thousands of med error deaths a year. The statistics say otherwise. This is why nurses are scared. Many nurses have made similar errors as RaDonda, so it is possible to make 17 errors. Just at my facility, I'm a younger nurse. I know of 3 sentinel events off the top of my head. So it is far more common than what people realize. And in addition, in this study, there was a schematic in this report that showed one nurse pass. There's hundreds of steps in 1 hour, just to kind of give this visual. That being said, do you think this decision will affect future reports of errors by nurses? Are they going to want to report errors?
That was the question I thought you were going at, and that is a concern here. I mean, RaDonda Vought was very upfront, and she conceded everything after it happened. You heard the audio of her and how upset she was. You wonder if moving forward, maybe because of this, people, for whatever reason, fearing they were going to be prosecuted, are less forthcoming with what happened.
Let me break down what Angela said in small bites.
All
First of all, she mentioned a sentinel event. A sentinel event is a grave medical error that causes a serious injury or death. It's one of the things that you report in the hospital when there's been a bad... This situation with Miss Murphy would be what's called a sentinel event. She's also talking about the error to human study that was done, which concluded approximately the number of people that die each day from medical mistakes or hospital mistakes is the people that would fill up a jumbo jet. Also recently, Johns Hopkins and I believe the British Medical Journal supported a study that medical negligence is the 3rd leading cause of death. At least it was when the report came out a couple of years ago. What she's saying is this: the way the culture is set up right now, with the liability system being what it is, that there may be disincentive for staff to report errors, to try to hide them or cover up what has happened because they're concerned about being drawn into the medical liability system. I guess my answer to Angela is yes, this could certainly have a chilling effect on reporting. You would think that's the case, although I can tell you my experience as a patient attorney, medical negligence gets hidden all the time. That's part of what I have to do is uncover it. I don't often get cases where someone is honest and straightforward as Nurse Vaught was about what happened. And I'll just be completely candid with you. She was out completely honest about this. And the concern is she got punished about it. And there's got to be some way we can accomplish staff coming forward and reporting things honestly and not getting punished for it. I think that's one point that Angela's making. But the other point is that the reason I don't like the criminal justice system is it's one thing when the hospital is paying money to settle cases and the nurse or the doctor is protected by the hospital because they get that corporate insurance, corporate protection. When they have to defend themselves in a criminal proceeding, Vanderbilt's not there to protect them. Vanderbilt's lawyers aren't there to protect them. They're paying for this out of their own pocket. That is a terrible disincentive for nurses to want to report things honestly, because there they say, there, but for the grace of God, I'm going to be sitting in that chair with Nurse Vaught. That's what I think, another point Angela's making, and I can't disagree with her. That does concern me, that nurses and doctors and other healthcare providers are going to try even harder now to hide their mistakes because they don't want to get roped into a criminal proceeding in addition to whatever they may fear would happen out of a civil proceeding. I
think you're right, and I think the vast majority of the people we hear from the medical community and nurses are thinking exactly that. Now, I have heard some. I have a message here that I was just reading from another nurse who says, look, she wishes to remain anonymous because of her opinion on this, but she's been in the business for a long time as an active nurse right now, and she understands everything she just said. But she's saying, look, it's a little disturbing to her to see how many nurses are just rallying around RaDonda Vought after having seen that list of 17 mistakes. And in her mind, and this is a nurse, I've got the message here, she says, look, this just is so beyond the pale to think that, well, you know, no, she understands why some criminal charges were sought in this. She doesn't like it, and she understands Vandy bears some responsibility, but she's like, for everyone saying, oh, this kind of stuff can happen, well, if I'm a consumer out there just hearing this, okay, and I do believe in the news business, I haven't seen a lot of cases like this, certainly, but if I'm hearing that 17 errors happen all the time in hospitals, I got a real concern with the overall system. I guess we're making the point here, yeah, the system's broken, but that's really disturbing if that's true. But anyway, she's saying she understands why the DA took this step, because in her mind, with what and she watched the whole trial and she's read up on it, she's saying this was beyond the pale. This was too far. And that's a nurse. So not all nurses are completely in agreement, though I think the vast majority think this verdict was wrong.
Yeah, I talked to one of my nursing experts who helps me in medical negligence cases, hospital negligence cases. She had an opinion similar to that nurse that you were mentioning, which was, she said, this is bad care, Clint. It's really bad care. But where she drew the line is she thought that in addition to the civil liability, there should have been a board of nursing inquiry to determine what kind of, I don't know if punishment is the right word, but the type of whether it's probation or some sort of licensure investigation to see, you know, make sure that she gets the proper training not to have this happen again. But she drew a line in the sand on the criminal liability. Yeah. And I think that's where most nurses are, is drawing that line there. But this nurse was very vocal to me about how bad this care was.
Yeah, so a lot of opinions there, and we're going to take more if you're on hold. We're coming back with your phone calls more as we talk about the RaDonda Vought case right after this. Stay with us.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather